Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, Hare Krishna, dear devotees, thank you very much for joining us, and I'd like to seek your good wishes, your blessings, so that we can commence the 9th canto of the Srimad Bhagavad Puran. And the 9th canto is entitled Liberation. So we'll do a very quick summary of the first 8 cantos, brief overviews. So first and second cantos, they correlate with the Lord's lotus feet. And of course, they're a prelude to the rest of the scriptures. They introduce us to the key philosophical concepts and the main personalities like Sukadeva Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj. And this canto establishes Bhakti Yoga. In fact, the whole of the Bhagavatam, throughout the Bhagavatam, establishes Bhakti Yoga as the topmost spiritual path, and Lord Krishna as the Supreme Personality Godhead, who is the fountainhead of whole incarnations. So in these 2 cantos, there are many, many wonderful prayers by devotees and how the Lord reciprocates with them. One that comes immediately to mind is Kunti Mata's prayers to Lord Krishna, and how he would reciprocate with the Pandavas. Then the birth of Parikshit Maharaj is described. The activities of chastising Kali, or giving him a residence, which included a residence in gold, and his helmet had gold, so Kali took residence of Parikshit Maharaj to a certain degree. The history of the Bhagavatam is described, circumstances in which this scripture made its appearance, and that's through the dissatisfaction of Vyasadeva and the guidance of Narad Muni. And then the Sarga and Visarga, the process of creation, is described. The Virat Roop, which is the universal form, and the description of the Virat Roop within the universe, the creation of the universe, is explained. Chatur Sloki, the 4 sloks which are the basis of the Bhagavatam, are described. And then the definition is given of the 10 topics of the Bhagavatam. Third and fourth cantos correspond to the thighs of the Lord, and they discuss primarily the topics of primary and secondary, the Sarga and Visarga creation. Primary is Lord Vishnu breathing out. Secondary is Lord Brahma, given the power to create. And that's through the conversation of Vidur and Maitreya. And many topics in this canto: creation, sub-creation, time, embryology, family life, Sankhya Yoga, because in the 3rd canto we had Kapil Dev talking about Sankhya, and then Bhakti, Astanga, Gyan, Karma. Spiritual worlds, material worlds is discussed, hell is discussed to a small degree, and then in the 5th canto, hell is discussed quite in detail. And then the permanent pastimes are of Varaha, and descriptions of Vaikuntha and Lord Vishnu. Interaction of Kashyap and Aditi, and how that compares to the interaction of Kardam Muni and Devahuti. Kashyap Muni and Aditi were the parents of Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksh, and Kardam Muni and Devahuti were the parents of Lord Kapil. And 4th canto is very rich in its contents of where Maitreya continues with the family lines of Swambhavu Manu, who had 3 daughters, 2 sons, and Devahuti, Kuti, Prashuti, Uttanpad, and Priyavrat. Many admirable personalities in this canto: Lord Shiva and his interaction with Daksha, Suniti, the mother of Dhruv, one of the most incredible personalities, King Anga, and he had a son called Venu, who wasn't such a nice king. Prithu was a Saktavesh avatar of the Lord. The Prachetas, who gave up everything because of Narad Muni's instructions. So it's really amazing examples of extraordinary devotional service that was performed by these personalities. And then many made mistakes. Daksha, as we all do, of course. Suruchi, Vena, Indra keeps making those mistakes. Prachinabharhi, the king, who was told the story of Puranjan by Narad Muni, and then he completely transformed his outlook on life. And so many positive transformations. He was one, and they all had some transformation. Of course, Venu was transformed into King Prithu. Fifth canto corresponds to the lotus navel of the Lord. And again, Sukadeva Goswami continues on the creation by Brahma, describes the dynasty of Priyavrat. So far he described Uttanpad and Dhruv Maharaj. Now he went on to the elder son of Manu, Priyavrat. And he talked about Sthanam, the position of the planetary systems within the structure of the universe, which is fairly complex for us to understand. And this canto addressed a very important topic about how even advanced devotees, when they fall from their position, they never forget their spiritual practice, even though they may be engaged in material life. Two examples were given, Priyavrat and Maharaj Bharat. Extraordinary examples, especially Maharaj Bharat. So the dynasty of Priyavrat was described. He wanted to renounce the world, but upon Lord Brahma's request, he had to take charge of the universe, the Bhumandal. So in that sense, he went from spiritual life into material life, but he never lost his focus, even though he was the topmost ruler at that time. And his son was Agnidhar, his son was Nabi, whose son was Rishabdev, that's right. And Rishabdev is incarnation of the Lord. And his eldest son was Maharaj Bharat, who, as we will remember, was at a very high level of Krishna consciousness, the position of Bhav, which is just next to Prema. But he fell from that position because he was became attached to a deer and thought of the deer at the time of death. Became a deer, but the Lord never forsakes his devotees. He allowed him to remember his previous life as Bharat Maharaj, and then in his next life he became a Brahmin, so he remembered his previous life as deer and the one before that as Bharat Maharaj. And as Jad Bharat, he gained the spiritual world. And of course, we know the geography of the universe. We looked at the structure of Bhumandal and Jambudvip. Sixth canto represents the chest of the Lord, and several interesting episodes center on the theme of protection offered by the Lord. Because Parikshit Maharaj heard about the hellish planets at the end of the fifth canto. So he became a little bit disturbed, and he asked Sukadeva Goswami, how can people be saved from going into hell? And then Parikshit Maharaj, Sukadeva Goswami explains that actually, initially he said it's, you should do karma kand according to the Vedic scriptures, or gyan kand, but Parikshit Maharaj wasn't happy, and rightly so. Sukadeva Goswami then explained the real way to become free of this material world, or especially the hellish conditions, and that's to perform bhakti yoga. And he gave this pastime of Vajamil, who was heading to hell because the Yamadutas came for him, but he spoke out the name of Narayan, not the Lord Narayan, his son Narayan, but that was enough to give him protection from hell. Not just that, but Ajamil saw the transaction that took place between Ajamil, the Vishnu Dutas and Yamdutas, and he realized that he had followed the wrong path, and then he transformed his life. In this canto is the Narayan Kavach, which was disclosed to Indra for his protection. Very, very nice Kavach. And also in this canto is described the demon Vrittasura, who actually, although was outwardly a demon, was inwardly a devotee of the Lord. In his previous life, he was Chitraketu, one of the most instructive pastimes in the Bhagavatam, which gives us so much knowledge about the futility of this material world. He had a son who was killed by the jealous queens, and he was lamenting. And at that time, Narad Muni and Angir Muni came and gave him gyan, but extraordinary gyan. Narad Muni gave the life back to the child and asked him, why have you left your parents so prematurely? And he asked, which parents are you talking about? I've had millions of parents in the past. Which ones are you talking about? And that gave so much great knowledge to Chitraketu. And eventually he became a great devotee, but he was cursed by Parvati, and he accepted the curse as a demon. And after that, he went back home, back to Godhead. 7th and 8th cantos correspond to the arms of the Lord. And Parikshit Maharaj was a little disturbed that why is the Lord favorable to Indra and the demigods? Is he partial? Isn't he supposed to be impartial? He's God. Because there were many pastimes in 6th canto especially, where Shukadeva Goswami described the Supreme Lord as the protector of Indra. But then Sukadeva Goswami explained that actually the Lord is completely neutral. And then he gave the example of how even demons, when they're punished, they're only punished for their benefit. They're actually given liberation by the Supreme Lord. This is the Lord's mercy. Even his punishment is actually meant to uplift. And that was, Sukadeva Goswami referred to a conversation between Narad Muni and Yudhishthir in Canto 7, which took place in the Rajasuya sacrifice. And pretty much the whole of this canto is this conversation between Narad Muni and Yudhishthir, where they, apart from, of course, Prahlad Maharaj's pastimes are in here, as well as Lord Nrsingadev's. But later on in this canto, it's also described ideal family life, the social, the Varnashram system, like that. But one of the most glorious pastimes in the 7th canto is that of Prahlad Maharaj and his sweet protection by Lord Nrsingadeva. Prahlad Maharaj never even asked for protection. When we'll see this in the next canto with Ambarish Maharaj, he was under threat. His life was under threat, but he never asked for protection from the Lord. Yet the Lord's protection automatically came. These are the staunch first-class devotees who we can follow the examples of. 8th canto, we just finished, talks a lot about the Manvantaras, the past and present and future Manvantaras. And then there were different pastimes, the pastime of Gajendra, how he was liberated by the Supreme Lord. The churning of the milk ocean, extraordinary pastime where so many incarnations of the Lord gathered at the same time to have these fantastic pastime. Lord Shiva drinking the poison and all the different gifts that came from the ocean. And then how Mohini Murti, Lord Vishnu's incarnation, came and bewildered the demons, and the nectar was all with the demigods. Then we saw the rise of Maharaj Bali and the appearance of Vaman.
We saw Matsyadev.
Yes, Matsya was there. That's right. Good point. That's right at the end. And Vamandev tricked Bali from all his possessions. And of course, Bali ultimately conquered Vamandev by his surrender. And then the fish incarnation, Matsya, was described. So the 9th canto, what's going to happen? This corresponds to the neck of the Lord. So we're coming close to the head, which is the 10th canto. This canto describes the stories of the Lord's incarnations, various kings in the sun, the Surya, and the moon dynasty. And various stories are given which describe the dangers of lust, anger, greed, pride, envy, that affects so many people, from kings up to demigods, to us as well, of course. And it shows also the power of Maya and how one can gain determination to take firm shelter of the Lord's lotus feet. So first, the Sukadeva Goswami describes the kings of the Sun dynasty, Vaivasvata Muni. We'll see that in a few minutes. And then from tomorrow onwards, we look at further aspects of the dynasty of Vaivasvata Muni, his sons, and Shyavana Muni, his pastimes are described. Then we'll come to Ambarish Maharaj tomorrow as well. And then Durvasa Muni will be looked at more in chapter 5. And then different children and children's children until we come to Saubhari Muni, and we see how it's so easy to fall in this material world. He just saw 2 fish waiting, and that was the cause of his downfall. And he was a great yogi. And then we come to Harishchandra, Sagar. This is very interesting because this is how Sagar brings the the Ganga down by her prayer, Sagar's sons get killed, and then later on Ganga is called to save them. Bhagarat, yes. That's chapter 9. And then King Katwanga's pastimes, extraordinary. He had 1 moment to live. And then we see what he wants at that last moment. Then Lord Ramachandra Bhagwan, his pastimes are described only in 2 chapters, but wonderful pastimes in good summary. And then different kings of the Surya dynasty. And then
Mahabharata also covered.
Mahabharata, not quite. Little bit in the Krishna book, it's covered. Yeah, in the Krishna book.
Here also.
So 10th canto. 10th canto. Little bit here, but the 10th canto has a lot.
I know this Kartavi Arjun story.
The what? Which one?
I know this
yes, Kartavi Arjun.
story.
Yes. We'll come to that. So this is the Moon dynasty. Soma, Urvashi, Gadi, Parshuram, Kartavi Arjun. Different pastimes. Yayati, very, very interesting pastime with him. And then Ranti Dev, again, another interesting personality. And then the final 2 chapters are leading us into the 10th canto with the conversation about the Pandavas and the Kauravas and, of course, Lord Krishna.
24 chapters are there?
24, yeah.
Like the 9th canto.
And then in the
8th
10th canto, there is, yes, like the 8th canto. In the 10th canto, how many chapters are there, do you know?
I don't know.
90.
Many pastimes.
Many pastimes. So let's look at this verse and recite this. 9:1.
Paravasham Bhutanam Atmaya Purusha Parang Sa eva sid idam vishwam kalpante anyan na kinchana.
You can read.
The transcendental supreme person, the super soul of all living entities, are in different stages of life, high and low, existed at the end of millennium, when neither this manifested the cosmos nor anything else but him existed.
So he's there before creation. This is the point that we can understand quite easily. He existed before, he'll exist at the end, he's existing during. Because of him, everything exists. Okay, King Yamna becomes a woman. This is an interesting name to a chapter. Chapter describes how Sudyumna becomes a woman and how the dynasty of Vaivasvata Muni was amalgamated with the Soma Vams, the dynasty coming from the moon. So Parikshit Maharaj asks questions. After being told about Vaivasvata Muni, who was formerly King Satyavrat, the ruler of Dravid, Maharaj Parikshit requested Sukadeva Goswami to describe the dynasties, characteristics, and abilities of the kings descending from Manu, past, present, and future. Interesting question. And this shows that Maharaj Parikshit had so much faith in Sukadeva Goswami. Vaivasvata Muni's lineage is described. Sukadeva Goswami, while describing this dynasty, begins with describing how the Supreme Personality of Godhead, while lying in the water of devastation, gave birth to Brahma. So we've heard this a few times, right? From a lotus generated from his navel. From the mind of Lord Brahma, Marichi was generated, and his son was Kashyap. From Kashyap, through Aditi, Vivasvan was generated. From Vivasvan came Shraddhadev Manu. So is another Manu who was born from the womb of Samgya, Shraddhadev's wife. Shraddha gave birth to 10 sons, such as Ikshwaku and Nirg. It's generalization to say that 10 sons were born from Manu's wife, Shraddha. Actually, Ikshwaku was born when Manu sneezed. And we'll see that in the 6th chapter of the 9th canto. So Manus are very powerful. Even a sneeze can cause the birth of a great personality. Yes, Naniben.
Yes, this is the time when Bhagavad Gita was first spoken by Krishna.
Yeah, good.
Vivaswan, Manu, and then Manu to his son Ikshwaku, isn't it?
Ikshwaku, well done. Good relation there. Yes, very good.
Krishna to Vivaswan to Manu to Ishwak.
Very good. Excellent. And
Again,
remember,
the disciplic succession was restored, and then it again came to Arjuna.
Yeah, good. And remember, don't sneeze too loud, okay? You never know what can happen. So, Garbhadaksha Vishnu, Lord Brahma, Marichi, Kashyap, Aditi gave rise to Vivasvan, who gave rise to Shraddhadev, Vaivasvata Manu, and then with Shraddha he had all these children. Of course, he came from a sneeze. Okay, and we'll see these children and their children through this canto. Yes, Naniben.
Prabhuji, so Kashyap and Aditi Kashyap Muni and Aditi, apart from Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyakash, they also had Vivaswan, isn't it?
There's Diti and there's Aditi.
Oh, this is through Aditi, okay.
Yeah,
Kashyap
this is through
and
Aditi. Through Diti,
Diti had 2 demons.
Yeah, that was the Hiranyakash, the 2 demons, yeah.
Okay.
And he is Haribo, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Jai everyone. So Aditi also was the one who did Payavrata in the last chapter.
Yeah,
Aditi.
it was Aditi.
She was distressed.
Oh, sorry, that was Diti.
demigod.
That was Diti. Wait. Sorry.
No.
That is Aditi because she is the mother of the demigods.
Yeah.
Yes, and then she was praying, and through her, Vamandev also
Vamandev appeared. Very good. Yes, good
And
relation.
that's the same Aditi, isn't it?
Same Aditi, yeah, very good.
Yeah. And then the Vivaswan is also the sun god.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in that cosmos, sun god is the one who goes around on his chariot,
Yeah.
round in the orbit.
Yeah, that's good.
So
Excellent.
that's a bit of a connection.
Yeah. No, that's good.
Try to connect all these things.
And Satyavrat Muni, or King Satyavrat, became Vaivasvata Manu. So that's at the end of 8th canto, we had the pastime of Matsya, who saved Satyavrat, King Satyavrat, and he was made the next Manu.
So, Prabhuji, Vaivasvata is the Manu of the present, isn't it?
Yes.
Present Manu.
Yeah, he's the present Manu.
Vaivasvata.
Yeah.
Also known as Shraddhadev.
Also known as Shraddhadev.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, it gets really confusing. And especially this is really very interesting person because he called his son His name is Nabhag. He called his son Nabhaga. So that really gets confusing.
Nearly Nabi.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's have a look at what happened afterwards. The birth of Ila. Really, this is really extraordinary. So Vivaswata Muni, the father of father of Ikshwaku, was sonless before Ikshwaku's birth. Right? But by the grace of the sage Vasishta. Now Vasishta has been there forever. We'll see him in the pastimes of Ram. We'll see him later as well. He performed a sacrifice, yagya, to satisfy Mitra and Varun. Then, although Vaivasmanu wanted a son, but his wife, she wanted a daughter. And she was doing this vrat, payovrat, of vow of subsisting only on milk. So we've seen versions of this payovrat. Aditi doing it, and even before her, somebody else was doing it. So she approached the priest who was doing the yagya, and she said, she begged him, I want a daughter, I want a daughter. So they were doing this sacrifice, and the priest's attention became diverted. And instead of asking for a son, he asked for a daughter. And they called the daughter Ila. Now, Manu wasn't happy with the daughter, but not with the daughter. He wanted a son. He was happy with the daughter, and they called her Ila. But he wasn't happy because he wanted a son, because the process of creation required the son. So then what they did, Manu questioned Vashishta, what happened? You're an expert in chanting Vedic mantras. How then has the result been opposite to the one desired? So this is an important point. We will not get something we don't desire. We will get what we desire. What we pray for, we will get. So when we're chanting, it's very important to be focused, because what we pray for is what we will get. So if we're praying for material opulence, we'll get material opulence if we're chanting. So this is a really important point to understand. So the idea is, when we're chanting, just to be focused on the Supreme Lord and requesting to serve him and his devotees. So Vashishta, he understood immediately the discrepancy on the part of the priest, and consequently, for Manu's satisfaction, the great sage Vashishta prayed for Ila to be transformed into a boy. And his prayers were fulfilled by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Why? Because Vashishta can please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He was very powerful. So he pleased him. And Ila became a beautiful young man called Sudyumna. Very interesting. Sudyumna, then, once upon a time, he went on a tour with his ministers in the forest. At the foot of the Mount Sumeru, there is a forest called Sukumar. And this is where Lord Shiva enjoys pastimes, conjugal pastimes with Uma Devi or Parvati. And as soon as this party entered into this forest, everybody became female. Even the horses turned into mares. So Sudumna also became a female again. Why? Parikshit Maharaj asked, what was the reason for this transformation? Sukadeva Goswami described how once some effulgent sages fixed in their vows came to see Lord Shiva in the Sukumar forest. At that time, Ambika or Uma or Parvati, same person, she was naked on the lap of Lord Shiva. They were enjoying. But seeing the sages, she was ashamed and immediately covered herself. So seeing Shiva and Parvati in intimate affairs, the sages departed from the ashram of Naranarayan Rishi. So after that, Lord Shiva, in order to please his wife, he made a vow, he made a proclamation. Any male that enters this forest shall immediately become a female, so that Parvati doesn't become shy. So since then, no male ever entered the forest. But they were not aware of this, Sudyumna, and they entered the forest. And they all became female. Sudyumna, being transformed into a woman, began wandering with his associates in the forest. She was very beautiful, and she attracted Buddha, who was a son of the moon, very powerful personality. Buddha became attracted to Sudyumna, and vice versa. They attracted each other. So they got married. And they had a son called Pururava. Oops. Aggrieved by his situation, he was happy for a while, but then he realized he's got a kingdom to run. He can't do it as a female. Aggrieved by his situation, Sudyumna remembered his guru, Vashisht. And immediately Vashisht worshipped Lord Shiva, who had originally put this proclamation. By the grace of Lord Shiva, Sudyumna received the benediction that he would live 1 month as a woman and 1 month as a man. So we talk about sex changes. It's something that's been happening since the time of creation. Nothing new. But he had the boon from Lord Shiva that 1 month he would become a woman and 1 month he would become a man. Thus he regained his kingdom. But of course, his citizens were not so happy. Very confusing. I remember one time in the office, we had somebody who was in charge of one of our PCTs, the NHS. And one Monday morning, he came as a woman. Everybody was very shocked. So you can just imagine the citizens very, very confused. Anyway, they had 3 sons, Buddha and Sudyumna, Utkala, Gaya, and Vimala. So these are 3 different sons from Pururava. Thereafter, he entrusted his kingdom to Pururava, their first son, and took the order of Vanaprastha life. So he went to the forest. So that's the end of chapter 2. Chapter 1. Any questions, any comments? Okay.
Prabhuji?
Yes.
Is there anything described more about I do not remember his name.
Which one?
Prabhuji, can you go back? This means Sudyumna was in second chapter. Is he anyway described?
No.
Or he is
That's
described
it.
in more chapters?
That's it. Finished. First chapter only.
No Pururava came.
No, hardly anything about him. Hardly anything. We'll see anyway. Yeah, we'll see. Okay, let's do this verse.
Evam saptasta guruna pratyagrihanat kritanjali adharaya dvitam vira udavareta muni priyam. When the hero of Prishadara was thus cursed by his spiritual master, he accepted the curse with folded hands. Then, having controlled his senses, he took the vow of brahmacharya, which is approved by all great sages.
Very interesting how the tolerance of these personalities is exemplary. So he was cursed, probably for no fault of his own, yet he accepted the curse and he took brahmachari and he again the greatest reward for doing that. Okay, so the title of the chapter is Dynasties of the Sons of Manu, and lots of dynasties are described. Prashadhara's mistake. After Shudumna accepted the order of Pranaprastha and departed from the forest, Vaivasvat Manu, being desirous of sons, worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead and consequently begat 10 sons like Maj Ikshwaku, all of whom were like their father. One of these sons was Prashadhara, was engaged in the duty of protecting cows at night from ferocious animals with a sword in his hand. Following the order of his spiritual master, he would stand in this way for the entire night. Once in the dark of night, a tiger seized a cow from the cowshed. And when Prashadhara came to know this, he took a sword in his hand and followed the tiger. Unfortunately, when he finally approached the tiger, he could not distinguish between the cow and the tiger in the dark, and thus he killed the cow by mistake. The tiger had fled as its ear had been cut. In the morning, when Prashadhara, who was quite able to subdue his enemies, saw that he had killed the cow, although at night he thought he had killed the tiger, he was very unhappy. But because of this, Vashishta, his spiritual master, cursed him to take birth in the Shudra family. So it wasn't really his fault. He didn't have to curse him. As a family priest, the spiritual master of Prashadhara, Vashishta, should have taken Prashadhara's offense very lightly. It wasn't a big offense. It was a mistake. But instead, Vashishta cursed him to become a Shudra. It is the duty of a family priest not to curse a disciple, but to give him relief through the performance of some sort of atonement. Vashishta, however, did just the opposite. Therefore, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that he was a durmati. In other words, his intelligence was not very good. So what happened to Prashadhara? He accepted the curse. He began to practice mystic yoga as a brahmachari, traveled all over the world, acting deaf, dumb, and blind. And in bhakti yoga, he worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then he voluntarily entered a blazing fire, thus relinquishing his material body and going back home, back to Godhead. So he achieved liberation. A curse was turned into a benediction. The Kavi, the youngest son of Manu, was a great devotee of Supreme Lord from his very childhood. Being reluctant to accept material enjoyment, Kavi gave up the kingdom before attaining full youth. Accompanied by his friends, he went to the forest, always thinking of the self-effulgent Supreme Lord within the core of his heart. Thus he attained perfection. From Manu's son, known as Karusha, a sect of Kshatriyas known as the Karushash were generated. Manu also had a son called Trasta, from whom another sect of Kshatriyas was generated. But although they were born of one who had qualities of a Kshatriya, they became Brahmins. So let's have a look here. There's a bit of a, hang on, where's the dynasty of, let's have a quick look at this. Right. There, some of the sons are here. Drista, Kavi, Prashadha. So these are all different sons. And we'll see more sons of Manu being described. And then their sons and their grandsons. Okay. So from Naga, another son of Manu, came the sons and grandsons. Here they are. Just look at this. Descending in order from the seminal dynasty of Narishyati, another son of Manu, were further progeny. So these are Naga's dynasty. From Naga came Sumati and Bhuttajoti, Vasu, Patika, Ogavan. So nothing of any particular note. Narisyanta, his dynasty, Chitrasena, Purna, Indrasena, nothing of any particular note. This is just what is described in these texts of the Bhagavatam. There are a lot of names. From the Simanu dynasty of Dista, another son of Manu, many sons and grandsons were born in that dynasty. From Trinabindu came a daughter called Ilavali, from whom Kuver took birth. So this is quite interesting. Kuver took birth. This is Dista. This is Dista. That's Dista. Oh, yeah.
Guruji, can you show the dynasty again?
This one is Dista. So this is...
Who is Dista?
He's one of the sons of Manu's son. And we'll see...
Is his son or grandson?
He's a son.
Oh.
Yeah. And we'll see some of these characters shortly. Or maybe tomorrow, Okay. Kashyap's son, Somadat, performed an Ashwamedha sacrifice, and by worshipping Supreme Personality God Vishnu, he achieved the supreme perfection of going back home, back to Godhead. So, hang on a minute. Let's have a look. Somadat. Ah, yeah, there you go.
Guruji, Janmejaya came.
Huh?
Janmejaya came.
That's a different Janmejaya.
It might be the same. Maybe not. Maybe, yeah. I think it might be the same because Parshuram's father or grandfather.
Who is Nara?
Where? Oh, Nara? No idea.
We don't know. These
No.
are different names of different.
Hey, Buddha came. Buddha. Another Buddha. Same
Yeah, that's
Buddha.
different.
Here is the Kuveras. Kuveras born to Ilavila. Okay, so that's the end of chapter 2. So
Another Buddha who married that time.
Yes. Was it the same? No, sure. No, I don't think it's the same one. It's just a different name, isn't it? That Shudubnya married.
I think that
It's a different one. Yeah, it's a different one. Okay, so lots of names. Tomorrow, not so many names. A lot more pastimes. So we can. Are there any questions or any comments? Anybody like to say anything, ask anything? Canto 9 does describe the dynasties and the sons, the grandsons, and the great-grandsons, etc. Even Lord Ramachandra's lineage is described in some detail. So it's quite interesting. All right, so let's go to the instructions. Madhusan Babu? Yes.
Even Ramchandra Bhagavan lineage was very small in some in the 2 chapters. So, but even it is small, they describe it with detailedly.
What did you say? What's the last part you said?
Means even
in detail. Yeah. It's summarized. It's summarized. Because
it
what
is lineage or the Ramayana in short?
Yeah.
Just the lineage. It's not, the Ramayana is not described there in detail.
In summaries.
Yeah.
Yes. But what Parikshit Maharaj explains to Shukadev Goswami, Shukadev Goswami explains to Parikshit Maharaj, you have already heard the pastimes of Lord Ramachandra many times. So this is what normally happens. We hear Ram's pastimes a lot, but Krishna's pastimes, not so much. That's why Shukadev Goswami focused on Krishna's pastimes.
Many of them don't worship Krishna, they are in material desires.
They don't worship Krishna?
So they don't know about Krishna. So
They don't know about Krishna.
So
Yeah.
Shukadeva Goswami detailed explain in
Yeah.
Bhagavatam.
That's it. That's it. Okay, so let's go to the instructions. So, Madhusan Prabhu.
Haribol, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Jai Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Guru Maharaj ki jai.
Okay.
I'm so glad that we've started Canto 9 as well. And amazing, we've achieved, and I'm really impressed by Rian's enthusiasm. He really wants to know. I mean, he knows more about each individual character as well, and it's just amazing. So it's a well blessed child there. But this is I found it kind of fascinating in chapter 1 that Manu got a daughter, Ela, instead of the son that he actually wanted. And this is, due to different desires of his wife, which probably wasn't well communicated or not with Manu or else. But sometimes it happens, doesn't it? Wife wants something else, but behind the back. Anyway, but so while performing the yajna, then it always kind of goes wrong in one sense. But then Manu didn't actually regret about it, but there was some lamentation there. And then, such unclear desires or intentions can produce wrong results. So we just got to be careful. So we're instructed by Srila Prabhupada in the purport, that in this age, the performance of this sort of yajnas for some kind of benefits, and especially when the Brahmins these days, they can't chant Vedic mantras properly. Nobody knows the sacrifice procedures properly. In South India, there are a lot of Brahmins who knows proper procedures for certain things and all that, but still, it is, because nobody can properly chant these mantras. So therefore, the best yajna for this age is actually just Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, and do Sankirtan yajna. And that's the best form of yajna for all of us, and it'll improve, it just benefits the whole world as well. So Prabhupada is so very clear in his purports about this. So, that's and in chapter 2, we see how this Prashadra, is cursed. I mean, he killed the cow instead of a lion, and that's also like it happens, doesn't it? In this material world. I mean, it's just fascinating. Srimad Bhagavatam doesn't hold back on any issues. We think everything is just new, but nothing is kind of this is perpetual, as they say. But he avoided this terrible consequences because he uses intelligence, and he actually didn't did devotional service to whatever extent. But this is the power of we return back to Godhead. So this is how powerful the path of bhakti is. So that's instructions from these 2 chapters. So thank you very much, Nabi. Haribol, Hare Krishna, and Hare Krishna to everyone.
Very good.
I hope that's appropriate.
Yeah, that's good. Oh, wait. Anybody else? Any questions? Any comments? Tomorrow we'll look at 3 and 4. And the day after is Janu Saptami. So we'll be looking at Mother Ganga on that day. Okay, so let's go to